everyone. A very good morning to those who are joining us from Singapore and Asia, and good afternoon or good evening to all of you joining us from other parts of the world. Thank you for being here with us for today's online event on building our food resilience with science and deep tech, presented by SGInnovate and StartCentral. My name is Jin from SGInnovate, and as a Singapore government-backed investor, we have been building up and driving deep tech innovations in AI, healthcare, quantum tech, and autonomous technologies across various industries. At SGInnovate, we believe Singapore has the resources and capabilities to tackle hard problems that matter to people around the world. And SGInnovate has been established to help ambitious and capable people to build technology-intensive products born out of science research. Today's topic is one that is close to our hearts, as the global pandemic has affected the lives of many over the past year and has been a huge test to global food supply chains and serves as a stark reminder of the importance of food security. Today's panel brings together speakers from R&D and food industry players to discuss Singapore's efforts in building our food resilience and how science and deep tech can help to address the challenges in food management and sustainability. We encourage you to engage with our presenters during the session by submitting your questions in the Q&A box located on the lower panel of your screen. Without further ado, I would like to invite Susan from StartCentral to give a quick introduction of themselves. Susan, please.
Hi everyone. Okay, my name is Susan from StartCentral. For those who are not familiar with us, StartCentral is an open innovation platform by A-Star, the Agency for Science, Technology and Research in Singapore. Our focus is to incubate and accelerate the growth of deep tech startups, and we also hope to bolster the startup ecosystem with the help of partners like SGInnovate. We also fosters interaction between researchers, corporates, startups, investors, and entrepreneurs across diverse disciplines. So we encourage you to reach out and connect with us.
Thank you, Ruby. We will now pass on the screen to Benny, who will be moderating our session, and we'd like to invite all our presenters back on screen. And to everybody attending the event, please feel free to share your questions in the Q&A box with the two speech bubbles at the lower panel of your screen. And we look forward to a very engaging discussion. Off to you, Benny.
Thank you so much, Jin. Thank you for all of the panelists for sharing earlier. Maybe I'll start with an introduction of myself. I am Benny, an assistant director here at SGInnovate in the venture building team. Among the things that we look at, as Jin shared very much earlier, agri-food is one of our focus areas. So I thank all of the attendees also for joining us today as we discuss about food resilience using science and deep tech. A quick reminder to all of the attendees, you can post any questions that you might have in the Q&A section. You'll see there's a box at the bottom of the screen. And I'll try and accommodate as many questions as I can. Now, for all of the panelists, if I could just very quickly invite you to give maybe a 30-second introduction of yourselves. Maybe we can start with Dr. Wong. Sorry, Dr. Wong.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Hi, Benny. Thank you. I'd like to introduce myself again. I'm Yiteng from A-Star and at the Food and Consumer Cluster, housed at the HQ level of A-Star, building programs and research platforms for A-Star and our local ecosystem players. We also do grant calls and also partnership with our industry. Yeah, in a snapshot, that's the introduction.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Maybe we can go with Ruby next.
Hello?
Hi, Ruby, we can hear you loud and clear. Maybe if you could give us a very quick 30-second introduction of yourself.
Okay, I'm Ruby from Westcom Solutions. Okay, I joined Westcom since the first day. Previously, I was working in a bank. But I was interested in environmental sustainability business. That's why I quit from the bank and joining Westcom as a startup company.
Okay, thank you, Ruby. And maybe we can finish off with Thomas.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Thomas Ching. I'm from SATS, and I look after the business development and network marketing for the food divisions in SATS. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. So having set the scene and the context, food resilience in the context of Singapore, we're looking at getting to 30 by 30, reducing 30% of our nutritional needs by 2030. if you in your line of work, all of you have seen various initiatives, whether it's in government, in corporate, even in the initiatives that your own companies have worked on. Could you briefly share about some of these initiatives that you have seen and found very useful in getting to 30 by 30? Yeah, maybe we can start with Dr. Wong again.
Okay, sure, Manny. Thank you for the questions. I think in A-Star, we are very privileged to have nurtured our research institute with multidisciplinary capabilities from material scientists, engineering solutions to biomedical science. And all this would say that will lay the foundation of how we work with our local farms in terms of upscaling and helping them to produce locally at a more efficient approach. For example, we have been working with some of these farms to understand how they can utilize the data in the farm in a more intelligent way, capturing the census data into an IoT platform to enable them to make informed decisions how they can grow their crops better to have higher yield and higher nutritional profile. This is one example. The other one, of course, I've mentioned earlier in my presentation of how we can help companies innovate their products to be healthier and more sustainable. For example, microalgae production in a laboratory system using bioreactor fermentation system is a possibility today. Yeah. So maybe the rest can also share the initiatives they have done. Yeah. Happy to talk more.
Sure. Ruby, would you like to go next?
Okay. So for Westcom Solutions, what we have done, okay, the very early stage, what we have done is just to create the machine and R&D for the microbiome together with A-Star to get a patent. Then we try to commercialize the product we have. Then we go into recycling food waste. However, recycling food waste is not enough because if we do not reduce the quantity of food waste, then the food resilience cannot be increased because the waste amount is still there. So the next step we are going into is try to reducing the quantity of the food waste. This may in line with some of the AI solutions of recognize what kind of food waste you are throwing. Then we try to minimize this kind of food waste that is generated. Then the other one is to track the quantity. Then we will try to prevent from over purchase during the food supply. So yeah, this is how we do it.
Thank you, Ruby and Thomas. Would you like to round off this question?
Thank you. So in SETS, we have been embarking on this sustainability journey for some time now. We are happy to see the 30 by 30 vision laid out by the government and very happy to contribute. We are working with some of the stakeholders within the ecosystem now, particularly on the urban farming side. Farming, as you know, in a land scarce Singapore is something very, very challenging. We have been working with different partners to see how we can engage in a more economical approach to work with different urban farmers, and also look at how we can have some offtake from their production, because we consume quite a large amount of farm produce in the 170 million meals that we produce on a yearly basis. So we are looking at how we can work with them in a more innovative way. But the main challenge today in terms of sustainable farming in land scarce Singapore is in terms of economic cost. So this is a big challenge that is being thrown to many stakeholders today in the environment. We're working with agencies plus the urban farmers themselves to see how we can end up with a win-win partnership, and also at the same time to see how we can increase the output in order to become even more competitive in the longer run.
Okay, understood. Thank you so much, Thomas. Maybe we can stay with you since you answered the last question. And as you shared earlier, SETS has been very active in sustainability, particularly in terms of nourishing communities, and in terms of treasuring resources. And it's a great point that you brought up on the work that SETS is doing with farms here in Singapore and helping them to sell their produce and make use of their produce. Aside from these efforts in working with farms, are there any other initiatives that you could share about how SETS is working with various organizations here in Singapore, whether they're corporates or startups, such as in areas like alternative proteins or anything like that?
Yes. I must say that there are many initiatives that is being undertaken at this point of time. I will just share a couple in the interest of time. In terms of environmental protection and sustainability, we are looking at how do we partner and work with key suppliers in terms of reductions of wastages, particularly in terms of the types of proteins that is being used in our various types of meals. So one way we work with the different suppliers that SETS utilizes different types of food processing technology. In our space, we normally divide food technologies into cook fresh, cook chill, cook frozen, and ambient technology. So these various food processing technologies are being used to work with partners to extend shelf life, because if we're able to extend shelf lives of food products, in a way, you're already reducing the potential wastages due to expiry of raw ingredients. That's one. Number two is also in terms of the utilities that's being used in production of meals. We use a lot of utilities to produce these meals. Examples, energy, water, right? So SETS has embarked on using solar technology as a way to recover sunlight, and then translate this into energy for consumptions of the building. Two is that how do we recycle a lot of the water that's being used through the entire processing systems. We do invest in various types of water recovery capabilities, and especially those technologies that's inbuilt within the processing systems. So that is one way that we can help to continually increase the sustainability of the operations. And lastly, more importantly, in terms of alternative proteins, this is something has been developing for some time within the ecosystem, but particularly the last 12 to 18 months, alternative proteins has taken a long and a very innovative journey. And we hear the likes of Impossible Burgers, eggless eggs, mayonnaise, and so forth. We have a distribution arm called Country Foods that are actively participating with all these alternative proteins. In fact, we did a major launch of showcasing of all these various alternative products some 7-8 months ago in Singapore, and working with them to see how we can curate menus and various types of products and service offerings into the various channels that we're serving today.
That's very exciting news about Country Foods and the work that you're doing in alternative proteins. Now, for members of the audience who might be representing other organizations, whether it's corporates or startups, how can they then work with SETS? I know you mentioned earlier about the open innovation platform, also the living lab that SETS is looking to set up in coming months and maybe I think within a year. So how can organizations then reach out to SETS and collaborate together as a partner?
One of the way that we are looking at is how do we bring in various startups and or interested parties to collaborate in the forms of creating products for the market. Bearing in mind that Singapore is a very small ecosystem, we have actively been talking to various innovation parties, including overseas as far as United States, England, and parts of Asia, including Japan, to bring multiple partners into this ecosystem to allow us to exchange ideas, share innovations in terms of the developments, and also potentially create products and services for the market. This is one way that we are creating this particular framework. We have started to work with a few companies in Singapore, particularly on the alternative protein types of development, because we represent quite a lot of consumer channels. So what we do is using this collaborative partnership, we innovate, come up with products, and we test out these products using our channels. One quick way and one quick wins for a lot of these new technologies or new products and services that is being introduced is leveraging on our channels and distribution capabilities to test out whether the products that has been developed indeed are able to meet the customers and or consumers' expectations. So one way to collaborate with us is to work through this type of partnership through this open platform to test out their products and services.
Okay, then maybe a 30-second opportunity to plug the platform. Would you be able to share how organizations can reach out to somebody at the platform or to some website where they can
I'm more than happy to be the linking person for now. We are going to officially launch the Living Lab sometime in January, February, and then we will be able to publish this in terms of how to connect. But for now, happy to be the link person.
Great, wonderful. I'm sure members of the audience will be very excited to work with SETS. So thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you.
Ruby, I see a number of questions coming within in the Q&A. They're all pointed towards Westcom. So I'll try and take them all together if I can. But very quickly, on the topic of collaboration, you know, Thomas also spoke about how SETS as an organization is working with other parties. Now, Westcom benefited very greatly from working with A-Star. Could you share about how that opportunity to collaborate together on research came about?
Okay. So Westcom initially was a trading company. So we actually import technology from Japan for this food waste recycling. However, during the very first project trial in IKEA and Somerset 313, the result was not so good and not so satisfying. So we figured out there are quite a lot of challenges. For example, Singapore food waste are more oily. We have more types of food waste is generated. And also there are kind of space restrictions for where you locate the machine and do the fermentation. Okay, from that point of time, we know that the technology we bring into Singapore was not suitable. So we need to find a new solutions that cater for Singapore market. Then we need to go into someone for help, a reputable R&D institution. This is how we go into A-Star. So after we go into A-Star, the HQ liaises us with one of the RI, which is the Research Institute, ISIS. So we start collaborating since 2016. So to R&D for the new project. Definitely it's a very tough process, but I would be happy to say that working with A-Star is a committed process, as the scientists from A-Star, they are all very dedicated and they are devoted into what they want to do and what they are going to do.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Ruby. I see also some questions coming in about different methods for dealing with food waste. So I understand that the Westcom solutions method, you know, typically uses bacteria. I saw a question coming in about insects, the use of insects and how that might work in this process. Could you share some thoughts about that?
Yes, there are different technology to recycle food waste using insects, especially like black soldier flies is one of the famous one. It's a R&D result from, I think, NUS. I would say that is also a good solutions, but it depends on where you want to use it. Because typically, if you use in city area, it will not be so realistic. For example, in shopping malls, people do not want to see a large quantity of insects in city area. However, if you have a centralized system using in a rural area to recycle, that is also a good option.
Okay, gotcha. Quickly coming back, and maybe I should have started with this instead, you know, in terms of the circular economy and dealing with food waste, could you actually help us draw a clear link between the importance of the circular economy and food waste to how we improve our food resilience and how we get to 30 by 30?
Okay. For me, the 30 by 30 very straight away idea is we have to go into vertical farming. We have to use less to grow more. This is my first thought. Then from a Westcom perspective, we have to make use of the food waste to generate a more valuable byproduct. For example, the food waste can be turned into fertilizer. This is one of the options. The other one may turn into liquid nutritions. Then maybe animal feed as well. The other option we can explore is like bioglue. This is also one of the direction we are going to work with the Cambridge on a future R&D project, also together with A-Star. So for the link wise, I think for waste, right, if we do not do a proper segregation, means the waste is forever waste. there will be no help for increasing the food wastage and the food resilience. However, if we can do a proper segregation of different types of waste and try to minimize the waste, then in this way we can go towards this 30 by 30 goal.
Okay, understood. But is there a logical endpoint to the circular economy? I saw that as a question coming in from one of the attendees, whether there is an end to the circular economy. The question I think is around, it goes round in circles, so we are recycling, but does it then come to an end? And this, I think, is a question also for Dr. Wong and for Thomas, if you see this as something logical to tackle as well. Yeah.
So for food waste recycling, like Westcom Solutions, the end product is organic fertilizer. So this one now we are under discussion with NPark on using all this organic fertilizer for landscaping in Singapore. So we also step into China market. So for China, we also have projects in Shanghai and Xi'an at this moment. So all the fertilizer generated, we are giving to the similar like AVA in Singapore. So they will use all the organic fertilizer for the city landscaping. So here we are able to close the eco loop.
Okay. And Dr. Wong, do you have anything to add as well? I know in your deck you shared a bit about the circular economy and managing food waste.
Yes, I think I agree with what Ruby has shared. I mean, there is, the terminology itself says it's circular economy, but actually where does it end? We talk about decarbonization of how you utilize some of these carbon excess in the environment, and where does it end up? So I think the ending point and application is important. And what we want to avoid is actually, you know, an end point whereby you use a lot of landfill and incineration processes that goes up into generating greenhouse gases and things like that. That avoidance the management needs to be tackled, you know, not only at the design of your product and along the processing, but also at the end application. And I'd like to really stress that things like insect proteins and feed for animal aquaculture is a novel approach to this, but we like to also understand that at the end of this journey is the consumer. Consumer acceptance and consumer behavior must change in order to accept some of these novel technology that actually enhances the sustainability of the planet. So in terms of that, I will say that we as consumers need to be responsible in our way of you know, accepting some of these new ways so that we can protect the environment.
Gotcha. Thank you, Dr. Wong. And Ruby, just very quickly, I know you started out with Westcom when it first came up as a company 4 years ago. So it's come a long way in those 4 years. What can we do to develop more Westcoms in Singapore?
Okay, I think firstly you have to believe what you are doing and what you want to do. You have to be interested. And secondly is, okay, R&D journey is a tough journey. So such as last time, the doctors from ISIS, they always tell us they are scientists, they are not magicians that can do everything. So along this tough way, you have to be very committed and have to be very persistent.
From in terms of assistance, grants, help, is there anything that we can do to help with producing more Westcoms in Singapore?
Oh yeah, A-Star, they actually have quite a number of grants that can support startup or go into this R&D sector. So for example, there is a T-Up grant. So this is when we first time working with ISIS, this is the grant we are taking. So it can cover about, I think 70% of one scientist fees. So yeah, there are quite a number of grants that you can take in. You can explore with the SME officers from A-Star.
Right. Yeah, just to add on to that, yeah, that's we have what we call a scientist or engineers common program, because we understand our local SMEs are in need of good talent and skills. So we really are happy to do some of this common of talent so that we can share expertise. The other way of how A-Star can partner with our local SMEs and startups will be we incubate some of their R&D personnel into a laboratory so that we can mentor them and build technologies together to co-create innovation. That's another way. And of course, at the HQ level, A-Star as an implementing agency has been rolling out a lot of these grant schemes for not only R&D upstreams technology, but also along the whole innovation chain. Even people like from the Enterprise Singapore is our partner to bring the last mile of some of these technology into the commercial market. So of course, there are a lot of these grant schemes available, and I encourage everybody to participate.
Wonderful. I did not expect the promotion for A-Star, but thank you very much, Ruby, because it very nicely transitions into our discussion also with Dr. Wong. So, you know, in your presentation, you mentioned a lot about what A-Star is doing in terms of the various areas in promoting agri-food development in Singapore. But food is such a broad concept, covers so many different things. So in looking to achieve 30 by 30, are there particular areas of agri-food that Singapore is looking to be self-sufficient in? Sorry, this is about Dr. Wong, sorry.
Oh, okay, Benny. I think there are several areas that I have shared very briefly just now in terms of local production of our fruits and vegetables, as well as the protein requirements by 2030. So by protein requirements, we are looking at how we can enable efficient production of our fish and aquaculture industry, as well as alternate protein, like what Thomas has shared through the SETS initiative. So alternate protein is something new that consumers need to be aware of. It's coming, whether we like it or not. But I think there's promise in terms of understanding how we can utilize some of these plant-based materials, even things like microbial protein from Sophie's Kitchen and the rest of the partners coming on board to support this. What is important in terms of science and tech is understanding how we can enhance the nutritional value, the food safety angle of these novel proteins so that the consumers can enjoy them and have, you know, less risk to fear. So these are the things that together SFA will come in also to ensure that there are good regulatory processes along the way to enhance the nutritional value and also the food safety perspective of some of these novel proteins.
Okay, understood. And you mentioned earlier about the various ways that A-Star collaborate with organizations, be it startups or corporates, and Ruby also mentioned about the grants that she's managed to tap on at Westcom. From a startup perspective, in going out to work with A-Star, are there particular qualifications that a startup should have before they reach out? Are there certain standards they would need to meet before they can work with A-Star, and what might those be?
Oh, okay. That's a good question to know. A lot of our startups or companies that come to us, normally they have key problems or problem statement that they would like to solve. So that's the starting point of how we can understand what they really need and terms of whether it is an upstream production process or a downstream. What is it that's lacking in the startup and SME that A-Star could play a role in terms of science and tech and innovation? There are areas that perhaps A-Star cannot come in. We will also bring in our sisters agency, Enterprise Singapore, Economic Development Board, or JTC. It could be a land issue or infrastructure issue, or it could be a food safety science issue that SFA can come in and also help. So we work as a whole of government approach.
Sure. I would also like to add a little plug for SGInnovate, just very quickly. So for startups looking for funding, looking for venture building assistance, we can also provide that angle. We also part of that whole of government approach together with all the other agencies like A-Star. So just wanted to add that little plug. So as we wind down towards the end of the panel, I just wanted to pick up yet another question from the audience, and this is for all of the panelists. With COVID-19, we're still not quite out of the pandemic just yet. But how has COVID-19 affected our push towards food resilience? Has it aided or has it made things more difficult? Would you be able to comment on that? Yeah, maybe we can start with Thomas.
Yes, I think from our perspective, COVID-19 has been an extremely important event that highlighted the need for supply chain planning, supply chain resilience in particular. If you can recall, the mass panic buying in the early days of lockdown in SG and in many parts of the world, we as a company were in the thick of things. when the process of lockdown occurred in many parts of the world. Our supply chain were literally disrupted overnight, and we can see some of our partners panicking because of lockdowns, because we procure quite a lot of strategic commodities within the group. We found that in this experience, thankfully, because we have started a program called Digital Integrated Supply Chain within the group for the last 2 over years, we were in a much better position because we could then manage the disruptions that were occurring on an hourly basis during the early days. So lessons learned for us, and I thought would be a good sharing point with the rest of the audience and panelists, is that supply chain is something that we take for granted for a very long time within the entire economic ecosystems, until such times when the border really starts to shut. We then realize that we have been taking supply chain for granted. I give you an example. If you recall, in Singapore, the supply of eggs coming in were highlighted, and supply of various types of commodities were highlighted by our ministers when he was receiving the various supplies coming from overseas. That tells you how challenging the situation is when borders are closed, when supply are disrupted. And I still think that even up to today, the supply chain has not gone back to normal. In fact, with the various second and or third waves of the pandemic occurring, more of such hiccups can be expected. In fact, we feel that the entire food supply chain within the world is displaced to a certain extent, and we can not really pinpoint how it's going to be settled in the next 12 to 16 months. Hence, we are taking a very cautious approach, looking at how can we further plan resilience into our supply chain within the group. Yeah.
It's shone the spotlight on a much neglected area, but it's one where different organizations, the government, are now paying closer attention to. Okay. Ruby, would you like to add as well?
Hi, Benny. Yes, I would like to make up one point. Is okay, COVID-19 is really have a very huge impact for our business, especially in our product microbite exporting, because last time we have go through the customs, all the testings, everything is smooth. As what Thomas just now said, we take it for granted. However, when COVID-19 happens, all these microbes, microorganisms have become a very sensitive product for exporting, especially for Westcom. We're doing a lot of exporting business. So a lot of testing, a lot of custom clearance have to be done and takes a very long time. So this also points out another question, which is the safety. It's not only about the food safety, also in this food supply chain, your waste treatment safety is another issue. Luckily, we are using a biosafety level 1 microbes, which is very safe. So we are able and manage to pass all the tests in different countries' customs. So I think it's a very good alarm to us, but also it's a disaster for a lot of companies as well. So this will remind us to get well prepared for the future business. We have to consider this as one of the things that may happen in the future. So we need to get well prepared.
Thank you, Ruby. So we've got supply chain 2 out of 3 for now. Will it be 3 out of 3, Dr. Wong?
I agree with Thomas and Ruby that the supply chain is very vulnerable in Singapore. There are many stakeholders involved, and we know that we depend a lot of regional suppliers as well, coming from the small, medium enterprises providing their goods to us. But I'd like also to highlight another aspect whereby locally, I mean, some of our companies are also producing themselves. And during the COVID period, I think technology becomes very important. They continue to want to innovate, to actually meet the consumer demand. So consumers are actually shifting some of their preferences into home cooked based meal, more nutritious diet, and they're more conscious about health. So companies need to innovate to reformulate some of these food ingredients and food formulation to meet that growing demand, in terms of understanding also how the shelf life can be extended, how we can help companies have continued operations and manufacturing, adopting some of these safe distancing measures. For example, it could be adopting more automation, intelligent system where they can actually control some of these factory operations remotely. So these are some examples I think A-Star is looking into closely with our industry partners.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. And I'm cognizant of the fact that we're now past 12, so I'll just round off with one final question. With 30 by 30, we are trying to produce 30% of our nutritional needs in 10 years' time in 2030. Right now, we're at about 10%. And there are some people who are naysayers who say, no, it's not possible, we're not going to get there. What would you say to them? Ruby, would you like to start?
Yes. Okay, I think 10 years ago, we have never imagined that we can have a Zoom online meeting here to have everybody, 100 over people here, and I can see Dr. Wong, I can see Thomas, I can see you, Benny. So this is the advancement of the technology, and I have confidence in the scientists and the research people, and that they are able to conquer this challenge, and we are able to go to achieve the 30 by 30 target.
Thank you. And Thomas?
Similarly, I think this is an aspirational target that has been set by the government, but importantly, I think, is that we have set a target, and within the ecosystems, how can the various stakeholders come in to contribute their part, whether it's through technology, through process, through management, through knowledge and exchange, and so on and so forth. Once we put in a structure and a framework, I believe this is something that's achievable. All we need is to balance between economics and affordability of the various consumers' expectations. So I still think that personally, this is a very good and very important target for Singapore to set, so that there's some form of resilience in terms of supply within the country.
Thank you, Thomas. And we started with you, Dr. Wong. Maybe we will end with you as well.
Right, thank you. So I was saying that this 30 by 30 goal indeed is ambitious for now, because Singapore hasn't been really geared up towards local production for the last 10 to 20 years. We have moved into an industrialization kind of approach. But I think we can start now. We have to start somewhere, and setting the vision is the first step. And I see that the key players are already in place in terms of the innovation player, the startups, the company. The investment landscape has been very conducive for Singapore. So with all these key players having a role in this national agenda, I think we are moving closer to the target.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Thank you for all of the panelists for your time today and taking us through all of your presentations. The conversation, I'm sure, will continue. And I invite all of the attendees also to reach out to any of the panelists, to us, to keep these conversations going. And I'm sure everybody has remembered that Thomas is going to be the contact at SETS. So do reach out, and let's keep the collaboration going here in Singapore as we work towards more food resilience and 30 by 30. So thank you very much, everybody. Over to you, Jin.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Benny, and thank you to all our presenters and panelists for the great sharing, and thank you to all our attendees for your ongoing questions. It's always heartening to see so much enthusiasm at our online sessions, but real conversations often happen after. So we do hope that all of you can keep connected via LinkedIn. And if you're interested in attending more food-related events at SGInnovate, our next one will be happening on 21st October on food printing. So do register until our next online event. Bye, everyone.
Bye.